nonverbal communication channel, which is haptics. So I'm not gonna ask a volunteer for this one, but this is communication through touch. So in some cultures, right, there is a lot more propensity for touch, right? That's more acceptable. Have you been in a context where like kissing on the cheek is, what was the situation?
So my dad's side of my family is very traditional Italian, and so when I greet them, I have to kiss them on the cheek and give them a hug. And if like when I was a kid, I didn't know that, and if I didn't, I would get like kind of get in a little trouble.
So, but it sounds like this is something that you have adapted to from a really early age.
Yeah. From when I was probably like, I remember the first time my dad was like, "You didn't do that." I was like 7.
Others? Has anyone else been in a context? Yeah.
Yeah, my mom's family is from New York, and they like kiss each other on the lips when they greet each other. And my grandmother, like growing up, she would always like want to kiss us kids on the lips, and like it was really weird. But
Yeah. Yes. My family did not do that, but did anybody else's family greet each other by kissing each other on the lips? Okay. Just Josh's family. All right.
This is my grandma. That sounds bad now.
So going back to the previous scenario, has anyone else lived in a context where, or visited a context where you had to kiss on the cheek?
I mean, I went to Italy and I had no clue what was going on, and some lady, we went to this restaurant, she immediately just kissed me on like my cheeks. I was like, what is going on? And my teacher's like, just go with it. They'll explain in a second, just go with it. So then from there on out, every time we went somewhere, we'd kiss on the cheeks. And it was weird, but it was kind of fun towards the end. You're like, oh, this is kind of fun. But then coming back here, you can't do that. You're gonna be like, what's going on? So.
Well, did you learn the specific rules? Because it's like
I mean,
considered appropriate.
it's been a couple of years, but I think I was supposed to go to the right first, but I could be 100% wrong. But I think you don't necessarily have to like kiss their cheek as long as you like almost like make like the kissing noise like close to the side of their face. I don't know. I had 2 Italian ladies tell me different things, so I was confused. So I did a mixture of both. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for all that detail. Thanks. I appreciate it. Sounds good. Eli, did you raise your hand too? That you were also in this?
Yeah, my family just had a friend, and her name was McCann, and she would always do that, like the great thing. And he's right. You don't really like kiss them. You kind of just like hit like the side of your lips with your cheek. It's kind of weird.
Yes. I'm just imagining all the people Max came into contact with.
That was a lot of Italian people.
So it can be really challenging for international students when they come to the U.S. from Spain or France to try to adjust, because they're trying to figure out what's appropriate in this setting. I remember we had one student from Spain, and he took me aside and was like, would it be okay if I did this with so and so or this so and so, and like, and kind of walked through like the implications of that. Well, they might not be ready for that or accustomed to that, so we kind of talked through that a little bit. But I'll give you another example of a haptic communication. So, as I mentioned, in China, oftentimes it's very okay for like friends to be touching each other, sitting on each other's laps. Men, that's usually perfectly okay. And so one of my friends, this did not happen to me per se, but this happened to one of my friends. He was sitting on a train in China, and in some of the sections of the train, they're very close quarters, and you're facing people, and oftentimes you're facing people that you don't know. And so he was sitting on the train, and because they're so close, you kind of have to like overlap your legs. They're kind of interlocked. So you can imagine like your stranger's got the person that you don't know has got one leg here, one leg here. And so he's sitting on the train, and he's listening to his music or whatever. And the guy across from him, he wants to talk to him, and so he takes off his headphones, and they strike up a conversation. And about 10 minutes into the conversation, he takes his hand and he puts it right here, right on his knee. As I hear the grumblings, what I assume by that is, perhaps you'd be a little uncomfortable by that. And my friend, to his credit, he did not react negatively. It's like, okay, this is a cultural difference. Like, this is beyond my haptic communication, but I'm just gonna roll with it. Like, some of you said you just kind of learn and you adapt and so forth, and that's what he did, and he adjusted to his haptic communication. There is a difference here in regards to low and high power distance. So in societies that have really high power distance, especially with people that are above you, you do not get anywhere close to providing any kind of touch. You refrain from that. In low power distance societies, if they're more collectivist than individualistic, there's a lot more acceptance for touching people who you perceive to be co-equals to you. The next nonverbal channel that I'd like to talk about is paralanguage. So paralanguage refers to how we use our voices, right? So our inflection, right? How we emphasize particular words, how we use noises. So I'll give you an example of paralanguage. So before becoming a professor, I had a lot of different jobs, but one job that I had was I was an apartment coordinator and in our complex we had people from all over the world. And when you're an apartment coordinator, a lot of times you get asked to deal with noise disputes. People are always complaining about how much noise their neighbors are making. So this one day, one of my residents from China, she knocks on the door and she's like, the people below me are just making noise all the time. They're very loud. Can you please handle this? So I'm like, okay, I'll go talk with them. So I went, and the resident below her was a resident from Pakistan. And so I said, hello, I'm the apartment coordinator, and he let me in, and we began talking. And it's like, the neighbor, one of your neighbors was kind of upset about some of the noise that you were making and just wanted to come talk to you about that. And he's like, no, I'm not making any noise, I'm just working all day. And as soon as he started talking, it's like, okay, I can see right away what's happening here. There was a paralanguage difference. So the volume that he was using, in his mind, was perfectly appropriate, culturally speaking. And so once I gathered this, I went up to the other resident who was from China, and I said, okay, I think there might be a cultural difference. Well, I didn't use the word paralanguage, but that's essentially what I was talking about. There's kind of a cultural difference here. And I will never forget her words to me. She said, no, it's not a cultural thing. They're just not normal people. And so I left that conversation being like, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. So a few weeks pass, and I'm just walking around the apartment complex, and she comes up to me and just says, okay, I get it now. It is a cultural thing. So she began to appreciate the paralanguage differences between her and her neighbor. All right. And there is a difference in paralanguage with individualism and collectivism. So in individualistic societies, like with face, we tend to be more boisterous and louder with our paralanguage than you would be in a collectivist society. And that's for the same reason we talked about before, right? You're trying not to disrupt the harmony of the group. So if you've ever heard that stereotype, and I don't know, maybe it's a stereotype, maybe it's not, but the stereotype of Americans being like the loud, obnoxious tourists, a lot of that is steeped in a cultural difference. And yes, there are loud, obnoxious American tourists, but part of it is steeped in a difference in paralanguage, or what's considered to be appropriate in terms of paralanguage. All right. So Lisa, would you help me out with the demonstration? You can stay seated there.